there. We are Luke and Ashley, and welcome to episode 2, season 1. And this episode is all about my favorite topic, all about gear, cameras, specs, lenses.
Wow.
We're going to dive deep into this episode.
I'm so excited.
Be excited. But first, we're going to listen to the intro music.
Turn it up!
All right, you guys ready? Because I'm ready. Actually, I'm not ready. This is actually not my favorite topic. And so Luke is going to talk a lot about the different cameras, lenses, and things that you are going to need at this stage of your journey in photography.
Yeah, so as you're listening to this podcast, as you're listening to this, watching this on YouTube as well, this podcast and this particular season is for the photographer who is starting their business brand spanking new, and you're in the 0 to 2 year mark. So this whole entire season, all the content that we're going to be bringing to you guys here for the next couple episodes is all geared towards that. So if you are a brand new photographer and you're like, where do I start? How do I start? What should I do when it comes to tech and comes to all the different things like that, then this is definitely going to be the season for you, but also definitely an episode for you. So like Ash kind of said, at this moment, she doesn't really care all that much for the tech side of things.
When Luke starts talking about tech, it's just like, I try to listen, like I really do. I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to him. And it starts out like I hear like R6 and 50 millimeter. And then all of a sudden I hear, rah, 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 and I just cannot follow along because you really like to get deep into the deepness of things.
Yes, this is not a marriage podcast.
Oh.
That's what she said. So, big office, fans. It's funny. I think most photographers, photographers do like The Office. It's like very common in the photography circle. It's very interesting. It's like when they're editing, you're just trying to like
Something you can put on the background and listen to.
Yeah, and it's just takes your mind off things. Anyways, we're gonna get into some of the technical stuff. So you're a photographer. You're at year 0 to year 2. Somehow, some way, someone has given you a camera, or you've purchased one, or one was been handed down to you, or you were like us. We bought a camera when our first child was born, and so we were going to document the life, and we wanted to have some good pictures. And again, at that time, our daughter, who's 17 now, there wasn't an iPhone. There wasn't iPhones like there are today. iPhone 15 with log, profile, and ProRes, and all. If you're watching, you see it. So there was none of that. So we had to figure out, the next best solution was to buy an actual camera. So what do you get? How do you even get involved into some of this stuff? So if you have a camera, regardless if you're Nikon, Sony, Canon, Fujifilm, those are probably the big ones at this moment in the market. A camera is a camera. You can use this camera to take any sort of pictures. The lenses that you have at that time, the body that you have, the camera body, is going to make it work. There's nothing wrong with what you have. You will hit some limitations on it as you start moving forward, kind of like what we did. Understanding manual exposure, understanding that if you get in a dark situation, you need more light to come into your lens, so you need a different lens that can work. So there are some of those things. So we'll break these things down. We're going to keep this podcast episode, most of these pretty short in a sense. I do not want to lose you in the tech, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Short and simple.
Okay. Short and simple. Okay. So if you're watching online, we're going to be showing you guys some different cameras and what we're currently using, and then some lenses. If you're listening, you just got to listen. So we currently shoot on the Canon R6. This is when this first came out back at the beginning of 2021, I believe. Yeah, late 2020, 2021. We went ahead and just purchased 2 of these. We were coming from the 5D Mark III and the Mark IV. We shoot Canon, and so we were using those. So the difference between cameras, you've got, at this state of the game in 2024, I would say you're more likely jumping into a mirrorless camera than you are a DSLR camera, unless it's been handed down to you. or you're starting off slow and you're just investing into older gear. Remember, at one point, X amount of years ago, the 5D Mark II, the Canon or the Nikon D750 or the 810 or any of these cameras were the top of the line cameras when these were first bought or first produced and manufactured. So people are going out and dropping $2,500 on these cameras, $6,000 depending on the camera body. So they were relevant. It's just technology has changed and things have gotten better. So now we've gotten into a mirrorless system and it's lighter, it's not as thick, it's different. The autofocus is different. So there's going to be a ton of YouTube videos online that can break some of these things down. So go find your camera specific YouTube video and find some people that really know way more than what we're going to talk about here in this podcast. But at the 0 to 2 year mark, should you really be concerned about the camera? No. What you should be concerned about is how to understand the functions of the camera. What is manual exposure? How does aperture priority work? How does shutter priority work? What's program mode? And then what is ISO and what's aperture and what's shutter speed? What are your thoughts on that when you first started?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember because you were shooting a little bit before me. And so I would just remember that you would hand me the camera and you would always put it in aperture priority mode, meaning that it would choose, I would have control over the aperture and then the camera would just do the rest for me. And so that kind of like pushed me a little bit where I had a little bit of control, but then was still using the auto control of the camera. So that kind of helped me get to the manual mode. So again, I think it's important to understand how to use the camera before investing into bigger gear, higher gear. Just learn how to shoot. I would say learn how to shoot in manual before you even go full into investing into something else.
Yeah, and the reason why I put Ashley on aperture priority mode is because we knew what aperture composition that we wanted to shoot in. We like the wide open 1.2 to 2.8 range of aperture. So instead of her trying to figure out the whole exposure triangle, like what if I set my aperture here, what should my shutter speed here, and this and that there, and she didn't have a real world reference to why she should make those changes in settings or to see those changes and what needed to happen, and getting frustrated and I'm in this and this and do I move the shutter and what happens to the ISO and what do I do with all that stuff? We let the camera computer do all of that. So I said, hey, set your lens or your aperture of the lens, 2.0, depending on the lens that you have. If you have a kit camera with a kit lens, maybe you have a kit lens that's like 35 to 70 or 24 to 70 or 18 to 35 is a common kit lens. And you'll see the aperture range starts at like 3.5 and it goes up to 5.6. That's when you start zooming in and the aperture changes and then your light changes and you're frustrated because you're like, every time I zoom in, it gets darker. Why is that? It's because you at this moment, you don't understand what's happening, and that's okay. So when you put it in aperture priority mode and you're making adjustments, the computer on the camera is adjusting the exposure for you automatically. Again, there's some people out there with YouTube videos that are going to explain a lot more of this to you guys. So if you're starting out, put your camera in aperture priority mode. Figure out the composition that you like, the depth of field that you like, which is how much blurriness do you want in the background, and set it there. And then adjust your exposure on your camera if you want to shoot at 0 or +1 or -1, whatever be the case. And then start taking pictures and begin to start seeing the results. So when you know that one setting is locked on a particular setting, the aperture, then you can begin to see how does the ISO and how does the shutter speed change when you point the camera at different scenarios and different scenes. If you go outside and it's super bright, how does the shutter change? And you begin to see the shutter go into 1/2000th of a second, 1/5000th of a second. You're like, what is this? And you begin to start understanding and you see how your ISO can change as well too. So just to begin to see how the exposure triangle works. Eventually you're gonna get in manual mode and you're gonna be doing the same functions, but in most cases, you're going to be changing the shutter mode yourself because you're gonna set it in your aperture that you want. You're going to set your ISO according to if it's daylight or bright outside or if it's low light, and you increase that. But then you're adjusting your shutter to get the exposure that you need.
Right.
So when you put in aperture priority mode, the camera's doing that. You just need to be able to relate. Like this is what happens when I do this. And you see the settings, you edit it in post. You're like, okay, that's how that works. And you begin to get familiar with those settings, and then I think you can manually do it.
And I would recommend too, because I'm just going back to when I was doing that. And Luke will get frustrated with this, but I remember it just helped me because aperture priority almost seemed, it was good. And it helped me, like Luke said, learn how the other functions worked. But it would also handicap me. So I really would challenge you too, if you're learning your camera and you're learning how to shoot in manual and you're learning these functions, shoot an aperture of priority about 75% of whatever shoot you're doing, and then switch to manual and just kind of play around with that, just so that it gets you out of that and it's getting you practice, so you're learning in that moment. So definitely try that out and let us know.
Yeah, in the beginning stage of this, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to be using your camera. You're going to be trying to get it to work. You're trying to You're trying to obtain a look that you've seen from other people's work, our work, somebody else that you're referencing and trying to build your portfolio on. And you're going to get frustrated, or you're like, why doesn't it look this way? Or you're going to run into a scenario where you go from daylight or a brightly lit room into a darkly lit room, and you don't know yet how to change your settings to accomplish that. And at the very beginning, that's okay. And having the tools like the automatic aperture priority or shutter priority or priority mode, which is the P mode, is helping you achieve that. So if you're frustrated, you're like, I don't know what to do. It's better for you to show that you know what you're doing in front of your client. Switch it to aperture priority mode and get the shot. Don't mess the shot up. Get the shot. Make sure it looks really good. And then go back when you're in post and you're like, okay, what did I do wrong, or what was I frustrated about, or what was I confused about, and begin to go from there. I would say after you get to the end of your 2-year mark, even way before then, probably your year mark, you should already be like rocking and killing manual focus.
Yeah.
Or manual.
Absolutely.
Settings.
Now, before we get too deep into the weeds, because this is easy to do, what if a photographer, has a camera? What lens do you recommend them having for family portraits, or if they're just starting out in weddings? Like, if they're going to invest in a lens, what lens is that?
Gosh, that was such a great question, Ash.
I was prepared. I did my homework.
You handed me that. I would say, and you can let me know if you disagree or not, I would say the consensus that you find everywhere is probably going to be the 28 to 70. It's going to be, or the 24 to 70, sorry. Canon came out with a new lens. Is it 24, 28?
20? It's 28.
28 to 70, sorry. We're shooting on the 28 to 70 right now. So the 24 to 70 is probably the best lens to start out with. Because it's a good range of wide, and you can kind of get up close. So you can stand in one spot and you can zoom in and zoom out and get different looks from that one focal length. And in most cases, you can get a 2.8 lens, aperture lens, which is going to allow more light in. So if you're brand new to photography and you've never, ever looked anything up before, thank you for making this your very first video. But if you have, then you're already going to know. You should know or see. Let's see if we can do this with the light. This lens, the 50 millimeter. Oh yeah, you can. Look at that. You can see myself in there. This hole is how much light comes in. This is probably wide open right now. But as I dial down and I go from 1.2 down to like f22, this hole here in the middle is going to get smaller, and it's going to get darker, and it's going to be like a pinhole. And that's just like how much light is coming in. So the larger the hole of light coming into your camera, the better low light performance you're going to have, because you're getting more light into the sensor. Again, you're going to figure this out as you're going, and it's going to be super simple. So
I would have said the 50, actually.
Really? Okay. Tell us why the 50.
I think the nifty 50, because one, it's very affordable.
It's like $100.
Yeah, it's super affordable. So if you're just starting out and you just want to get a decent lens, I would say the nifty 50. And what is it? What aperture is the nifty 50?
1.8.
1.8. So you can go down to 1.8, which gives you that creamier, blurry background, which a lot of photographers love.
Portrait background for those iPhone users.
Yes. And it's a great lens. It doesn't give you that zoom option, so you need to move your feet, but I think that really trains you as a photographer as well to move around the couple, to kind of challenge yourself, not to just stay in one place. So I would recommend the nifty 50, but I liked how you said the 24 to
Yeah.
70.
If you had to choose two lenses just to get started as you start doing this, 50, yeah, and the 28 to 70, because you're going to need a wide angle. And there's only so much you can do on a 50 if you have to back up into a room, especially for weddings, that you're locked. You're kind of limited in that regard. You can only go back so far. But with the 28 to 70, you can get wider and kind of do that. Yeah, and I think you could rock your photography business, which we did on those two lenses for probably a good 2 to 3 years easily. Not change anything, rock those two lenses, save your money, and then kind of go from there. So yeah, that's what we'd say on lenses. And going back to the camera bodies, again, your camera body is great. Invest in the lenses more than you would in this, because this is going to change. Technology is going to change. The camera body is going to change. The lenses, if you stay with Canon or Fujifilm or Sony or Nikon, those are the investment pieces. Those are the things you want to invest in and carry on for the good 10 years probably. I would say the camera manufacturers don't change their lens mounts that often. It's a long time. I think the EF or Canon, I'm going to BS here and just say 20 years. I have no idea how long it was been in play, but they just came out with their new mirrorless options. They had to come out with an RF lens mount because of technical reasons. So I can see them staying with the RF lenses for a very long time, 10, 15 years. So anything you buy for the next 10 or 15 years, Canon or even Nikon with the Z mount, I believe, Sony and stuff like that, you're going to be fine. So invest in the lenses and get the best body you can at that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so shoot in RAW. Don't worry about JPEG. You always want to shoot in RAW because that gives you the best flexibility for editing your photos and delivering those photos. You can export them out to JPEGs. And let's see, what else for tech? And I would think at this time too, get a on-camera flash. It is 2024 and on-camera flash is making its return.
Yeah, so you can be trendy.
So you can be trendy. Exactly. You can be relevant at 0 to 2 years. So that's, I think, where you should start at, on-camera flash.
Yeah. Just learn on camera flash. You could even buy little modifiers that go on the flash to soften the light a little bit. But I wouldn't recommend when you're first starting out and you're learning all of this, not to get too heavily invested in off-camera lighting.
Yeah. It's not necessarily needed at this moment. You're not getting the jobs that are requiring that. Your skill level at 0 to 2 is not there yet, where somebody's going to say, hey, I need to hire you to shoot this elaborate wedding in a 2,500 square foot ballroom where you need off-camera flash or something like that to light up the couple. You're not going to be there yet unless you are a Michelangelo of photography. Possibly.
Which there are a few.
Yeah.
There are a few, but
Yeah.
if you're into growing slow and you're looking for budget friendly, like what do I need to just start building my portfolio? This is our advice on what you need.
Yeah. I'll create a guide for you guys or some links down below, specifically for this episode that has links to like budget-friendly flashes. We use Canon, but I think honestly we might be going to Godox. Canon's great. When they went to the new mirrorless systems and they have now a new hot shoe mount and all this other stuff, some things got messed up and we're fine functionality-wise. But there's just some things that we keep running into that we're like, it's either switch or upgrade to the new Canon stuff. So again, low and slow, but we're making it happen with no issues. So I think that's it right now for camera gear.
Yeah, I think that was great.
Cool. Well, again, our purpose of this podcast, especially this season, this episode, is just to give you some quick bits and tips on what you should do for your gear. Keep it simple, slow, and kind of go from there. If you have any other further questions for us, please leave some comments. Reach out for us. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can do so. That link is in that profile. Subscribe if you like this.
Yeah, subscribe. Hit that button.
Yeah, hit those little buttons down there, subscribe, bell, whatever, the notification stuff. And if you're interested in doing a little bit more one-on-one coaching with us or mentoring, we can definitely have that option for you as well. That is down below in the description on how we can do that for you guys. So outside of that, thanks.
Thank you. This was fun.
All right, we'll see you guys in the next episode.